Okay, I think we are live. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome again in OT Security Huddle 3. This episode is continuation of the previous one, where we discussed the need for risk assessment in industrial control system, and we also discussed what will happen when a risk will materialize in the industrial control system. So, today we will be doing a bit of a recap of what we have discussed last time, and then we will be taking a use case to understand how practically we can achieve the risk assessment in industrial control system. Okay, so let's begin with the discussion then. Yeah, you know me, you know Manju, and on this onset, I will again take the opportunity to thanks Manju for joining me in this discussion and bringing these wonderful topics to discuss with the people which are there online. Before we begin, a bit of disclaimer that whatever we are doing does not mean that we are representing the organization that we are working with. This is the outcome of the personal interest, and we want to share the knowledge with the people. And if there is any error, omission, or misunderstanding, that may be correlated accordingly. So the agenda of the session, we will be doing a brief recap of the Huddle 2. Then we'll quickly see why we need this risk assessment. We'll also see the standards that are available. And finally, we'll go into the practical risk assessment mode, where we will be discussing the prerequisites, the workflow of the events, and the use cases. Okay, so last huddle, we have discussed the requirement and the understanding of risk is very important for industrial control systems, which is majorly because of three big reasons. Because industrial control system have big safety impacts. If you see any big attack on industrial control system, whether it's Stuxnet, whether it's black energy, um, whether it's Triton Trisis, they had some impact on the physical side of the world as well as the production side of the world. The second big important part is the operation disruption could happen when something goes wrong. So that's why we need to understand the risks that could arise because of cybersecurity issues. And third and final, both of them will sum up as the financial risk. So we really need to understand these issues in our environment. The importance of risk assessment is driven from the vulnerabilities that exist in our environment, since security is not a one-time event. Any OEM who is supplying the industrial control system, they do it proactively, or because of the regulation, they do release the new threats and risk arising out of the new vulnerabilities that are discovered. And we really need to do the risk assessment of our environment continuously to understand these risks which do exist there. Also, since attackers are always ahead of the defender, they will come up with new and new threat landscapes. And we really need to understand what could be the new threats which are there in our environment. And finally, the consequences which sum up through these vulnerabilities and threats that we have in our environment. The process of risk assessment basically involves identifying the system under consideration. Then we need to identify the threats through some threat modeling. Finally, we need to do some risk assessment through some tools and some online available resources. We'll be discussing them today as well, and we'll be also giving you some links of the online available open source tool as well. Then, as the outcome of this is the impact that we need to understand. If we look at the standard size, there are four major standards that are generally used in the cybersecurity risk assessment. The first one is the ISO standard 31,000 2018 version. Then we have a special publication 8,830, and the other one is from the 27K series of standard 27,005. And last but not the least, the industrial control system specific standard 62443 3-2. And today's discussion is mostly driven from the process that are described in 62443 standard and the detailed risk assessment methodology that is being given in the standard. After this, we discussed last time that the formula for risk is a threat times vulnerability time consequence, and we can utilize a matrix to calculate this. If we are using a 5:5 matrix, then we can divide it into different subsegments like medium, medium low, medium high, high, and very high, something like that. And we'll be utilizing a matrix like this in today's discussion. Uh, Immediately after this is the one slide that I wanted to discuss before we get into the practical aspect, a little bit of theory. Uh, with an example, that we know now that the risk is basically a product of threat time, vulnerability time, consequence. And if we have an example like a general assembly area into an car manufacturing plant who is using a industrial automation and control system, there could be threats like USB devices. And these devices can actually cause malware infection or system malfunction. And this could become a bigger threat for the manufacturing organization. And since generally these areas are open and there might not be any physical control available, they are vulnerable to these kind of threats. And consequence generally is the non-availability of resources. So if I have to calculate the risk out of this information, is I first need to identify what are my category, threat score in the scale of 0 to 5. And if I assess that generally these plants are open, the network assessment might say that, okay, my threat score is 3. Then my vulnerability, since there is no control available, could be 4. And consequence, since it's like impacting my operation, could be again 4. And if I multiply with the risk formula, then it will become 3 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 4, which is 48. And 48 out of 125, which could be the highest score, gives me that this kind of risk is really high and I need to take some mitigation measure to fix this. So this is just the theory and recap of last episode that we have done. Now I will start with today's session. So for today's session, we have kept like the prerequisite for a risk assessment, and then after this, we will be doing a deep dive of architecture that we have prepared specifically for this session. So before that, Manju, would you like to add on the last week's things and then maybe take up the today's discussion further?
Sure. Shiv, thanks for arranging this session. Really, sometimes I think the people what they are expecting when they hear about OT security, the first thing comes to mind is the risk assessment. So when we had a discussion that on which topic we need to address, I think this is one of the interesting and I think so many people have asked me as well, like how to conduct the risk assessment. I think we are at the right place to discuss these things openly. We will be using, some of the publicly available documents to share our knowledge as well, because these experiences, it might differ because I will be working in different projects, which might be from oil and gas or petrochemicals. Maybe you are working in water and wastewater. So each and every sector will have its own risk. When we talk about threat vectors, so it varies from the threat actor and the vulnerabilities. It varies from sector to sector. So even each organization will adopt different risk methodologies. As you rightly mentioned, there are various standards being there in the market, as well as when it comes to asset owner. Most of the time, people use NIST 830 or even ISO sometimes, and NIST, this IEC 62443, right? Yeah. So today, before jumping in, we would like to mention that whatever material we are sharing here on the public domain is just only for the educational purpose. This is not for the commercial thing. Just keep that in mind. Yeah, let's straight away start, jump into this today's risk assessment. Yeah. Shiv, would you like to start with the prerequisite, like how we need to
Yes,
start? Yeah.
yes. So as I mentioned, that we will be following the IEC 624433-2 methodology. And before we begin, we need to gather some documents and some information about the system that we are going to assess for the risk. And first on them is the system under consideration. In the previous example that I have discussed just now, is the General Assembly automation system was the one that we consider as system under consideration. Similarly, whenever we are doing a risk assessment, the first thing that we should ask is at what system are we doing the risk assessment for? If I take the same Automotive example again, there could be like a general assembly area, there could be an engine manufacturing area, there could be this chassis manufacturing area, it could be paint shop, there could be electrical shop, and number of shops could be there. So whenever we are doing the risk, we need to first define which area we are targeting this, because generally each of the shop is coming from one vendor or the other, and they might have their own system, their own protocol, their own applications running into that area. So it is very important to understand that system first, and then define the boundaries for the risk. So the system under consideration might involve the asset inventory, which all assets are there. And asset inventory should not only be the hardware, it should include the software asset, it should include the application, it should also include the critical people which are there in the area. And also, it should include the compliance related requirement like licensing of the application, all those kind of information as well. There is a n number of things that we can do with the asset inventory itself, like each of the plant would have its own format and template of the asset inventory, right? But for today's discussion, we have prepared a basic asset inventory which have some information available, and this could include maybe the asset ID, asset name, the make and model of the asset itself, which all protocol I'm using it for, what is the configuration, like whether it's running a standalone, whether it is running in a redundant manner, and then also who is the owner of that particular asset. This could be like the manager who is managing the particular shop floor in the plant. Then we also need the system architecture, how all these systems are connecting, and finally the network diagrams which would show how these assets are communicating basically. So why these two are different is the system architecture will tell you the block level diagram of how this overall architecture is, where the network level diagram will tell you the details like which asset is having what IP and what layer of the Purdue model they are lying into. Then we need the risk matrix. Each of the organization would have its own matrix. If it is not available, then you can use the standard risk matrix, which is given into 3-2 standard, or also that the one that we have shown into the last discussion as well as the previous slide. And since industrial control system have safety element into it, the process hazard analysis is very important. Uh, like if it's the paint shop, and we really need to know what is the chemical that would be there and how we are releasing them into the environment. If there is any gaseous hazard also available into a plant which is processing some chemical things. All those things need to be understood, because the system that is controlling the release of these substances are controlled by a cyber system. And if there is any risk to this system, there could be compliance issue, there could be an environmental issue, and there could be safety issues. Then the next is gathering the threat information, and there could be n number of resources to gather this. One best source that is available is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It basically enumerates the threats in terms of the hacker group who has attacked these infrastructures, and the methodology that they have used to attack that particular infrastructure. And finally, once we have the list of asset inventory, then we will be also gathering the vulnerability information about these assets. This vulnerability assessment could either through a full-fledged assessment that we can do into the network, or there are some open source tools that are available through which we can just search that particular make and model, and we can find out the vulnerabilities that do exist into these assets. So that would be the prerequisite, and the workflow of the discussion is we'll be doing the calculation of the initial risk through the formula threat times vulnerability times consequence. Then we'll put some countermeasures and recalculate the mitigated risk. And the outcome of this for an organization could be either doing some additional countermeasure to arrive at the risk which is acceptable to them, or just say, okay, the already recalculated mitigated risk is acceptable to them. Sometimes they would just say, okay, this is not applicable to us, they discard it. And last but not the least is the transferring of the risk through either buying a cyber insurance or putting it to a vendor or a third party. So that's how the risk assessment flow generally works. And immediately after this is a sample architecture that we have prepared. But before that, Manju, would you like to add something on this methodology?
Yes, thanks, Shiv. I think this gives the clear picture. Here, for any risk methodology, if you take, be it a qualitative or quantitative, more or less the same methodology will be used. I mean, the workflow. In the prerequisite, we try to include only the relevant, important documents what we need to refer. As Shiv rightly mentioned about the what are the documents that we need to collect. It's on the system architecture network diagram, or even sometimes data flow diagrams, also policies, procedures. Sometimes we have seen that there are IT security policy will be there in the organization, but we have not seen much of the OT security policies. So the one good thing is, we can recommend to customer, or it is good to have the OT security policy as a separate. So these things we need to keep in mind whenever we conduct the risk assessment. And also you can visit site and have a questionnaire based on your organization, based on the risk methodology. So there are many things available. There are various methodology. Basically, maybe each organization will have their different methodologies, but yeah. So apart from that, the workflow, as we rightly mentioned here, that usually we calculate the initial risk, threat into vulnerability into consequence, that we will go through now with the practical approach. And also, if there are any existing countermeasure available, when we calculate the unmitigated risk, so then we will come to know. So then, we can take a decision whether, usually the who is doing the risk, assessment, only recommend the solution or the action to be taken, but it is up to the asset owner, or the system owner, to decide whether to accept the risk or reject the risk or transfer the risk. So it is purely depending on the, don't think that the risk assessment is finalized. And the one thing is for sure, that it also has to be adopted for any change management. I mean, tomorrow you are going to add new PLCs or new hardware, new software. So better to conduct the risk assessment at that level also. So also you keep this in mind. Yes, Shiv. Yeah, I would like to add these points. Maybe, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Manju. Thanks for adding that. So now I will share this simple architecture that we have prepared for you. Meanwhile, you can just also share your screen as well. Okay, so this is a very simple architecture that we have kept for today. It has a level 0 device, a bunch of them. One of them is a flow meter that is reading the flow of liquid, and then there is a flow valve that will take action whether to open the system, whether to close the system. This all is controlled through a PLC, and the PLC is then giving the situational awareness through the HMI that is connected at layer 2. We are keeping it very simple for today's discussion, since it's a very uh, beginner level understanding of risk assessment, and it is very, very important that we start light. Later on, the same model can be replicated on the bigger systems as well. And just an heads up that immediately after this session, we have planned a next session, which would be arriving at the security level target according to IEC 62443, 3-2 and 3-3. And there we might use a architecture which is a superset of this architecture, including layer 3, 3.5 devices as well. Yeah. So this is where we start. Manju, I'll hand it over to you now so that you can
Yeah.
share this uh, other
Yes.
documents as well related to this diagram.
Sure. Hope everyone can see my screen as well.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I hope it is visible. Yeah. Please pardon me on that. Hi. So we have shown that the what are the workflow that we need to consider, right? So before that, we have taken the 3-2 risk assessment methodology. I would like to highlight how it, the workflow as per 3-2. This is publicly available document from ICA, ISA website. This is as per the, detail level risk assessment. You can see here. So what it says is, the first, when you start, you have to identify the threats and vulnerabilities and the consequence, because we know that when we calculate risk is nothing but threat into vulnerability into consequence. Then you have to determine unmitigated likelihood. I mean, what could be the likelihood based on the risk matrix that we will show it to you. Then ultimately it will come the risk. So then determine the SLT, target security level. So it varies from organization to organization and zone by zone. But we will not go deep dive into this because this is a very big topic, how to derive SLT. So what we need to do is, for SLT, we have planned for next session. Next security huddle is on the this particular topic. Then we will, for any organization, there will be a tolerable risk. Okay, even for our example, we have taken tolerable risk as 5, just for an example, but it varies from organization to organization. Then we will check if we will arrive at this number, right? Some risk number will be there, and we will be verifying whether it is greater than 5 or less than 5. If it is greater than 5, then we have to check if it is any existing countermeasures are available immediately to use it. If there, then again we will evaluate the risk. Ultimately, if you have existing countermeasure, definitely the risk will be reduced. And then finally, determine the residual risk. Because a risk is cannot be eliminated completely, there will be some risk will be available even after some recommendation. So finally, we will document and communicate the result, to the asset owner. So here, an important point. I think someone asked, safety team must join in a risk assessment. Yes, Shiv has already answered that question. Yes, definitely. I will tell you how the risk assessment process happens. So when you are assigned with to conduct the risk assessment, who will evaluate the? I mean, who is the assessor? Okay, for example, now I am the asset owner. I will be, you guys are from consulting company, for example, anybody, or Shiv, probably he's from consulting company. Then what I'll do is, I will give him the corporate risk matrix. If it is there, I will give. Otherwise, I will ask the consulting company to prepare their own risk matrix based on the their experience. So it is up to him to complete the risk assessment for my assets. So now the risk matrix is available, and he is the the facilitator who conduct the risk assessment. But when we provide the number, for example, anyways, I will show that when it comes to the numbering, the risk numbering, when we say no, for example, it is not up to one stakeholder. I mean, the risk facilitator has to consider everyone. I mean, he needs to include so everyone in conducting the risk assessment. For example, from operations team, from safety team, even for maintenance team, even from IT security team, some managers, operations managers, everyone has to be included, even vendors. I mean, third party vendors also to be included, because we have seen in any asset owners plant, we have seen multiple vendors, DCS, PLCs, HMI workstations, and OPC servers will be there, and SCADA system will be there. So whenever we conduct a risk assessment, all the parties to be included, and then we will come to a conclusion point where okay, we agree to one. Based on the risk matrix, we will come to a one rating. Then finally, we will check if there are any countermeasures. So initially, the risk assessor, like Shiv, he will prepare, and then he will conduct a workshop along with the the asset owner place. So what happens there is, he will collect all the information, and when we come to when we present this Excel sheet to them, then it is up to the customer whether to accept or not, because based on the criticality of the asset also it will vary. So for us, maybe the criticality is SIS system, but for them maybe something else. Even in the PLC, for them it is critical. For us, we might consider non-critical. So it varies. So it is up to the asset owner to finalize, I mean, the rating. So once it is done, we will collect all the information together. So, and then we will submit as a report. So now, if you see with the workflow, first we will gather all the information. Now I have the simple architecture. What are the here we have created a very simple asset inventory. It is not necessary that all these headlines should be there. You can change the these namings. I mean, what we have included is the very simple asset inventory tools. It should have hardware, software, and even virtual environment. If you have virtual machine, you can include those as well. So basically, we have included asset name, asset type, asset ID, make, model, version, software, firmware, why it is important to have all this information is to find the the vulnerabilities in the the public domain. So exactly. Yes, risk assessment also to be shared with site incident response team. That is true. That is correct. Now, if for example, now I have we have taken that PLC name. Asset type is hardware, and this is self-explanatory. I am not going to read. So these are the information that are available here. I have listed down from the system architecture, and sometimes the asset owner also will have the same architecture, right? So here even we listed down which software is available, like Windows XP or WinCC software, and which version we are using, and what is the version of software firmware, and if we have any IP address, MAC address, and which protocol we are using, and if we find any open ports. So from logical and even network diagram, if we have, we can collect all the information related to the network IP addresses, which will be really helpful when we, and also we need to review the configuration logs and syslog files, and even you can collect the pkf file and run through your vulnerability assessment tools like clarity, or even you can run through Nozomi, and also the Nessa scan, you can do it. So some of the tools which you can use based on your organization. And once we done with this, okay, what yeah, also I would like to highlight one point. Yeah, somebody asked, can we use the threat model and rapid risk during the risk to determine potential architecture risk? Yes, definitely we can use threat modeling because based on what because usually the threat modeling it takes a lot of time, but based on if you have ready-made templates for the threat modeling, then definitely you go for it. You implement because most of the threat modeling what we have seen is not apt for the OT environment. I mean, if you have already developed these threat modeling tools for the OT assets like PLCs, DCS, and what we have seen from the stride model is some of the threat modeling which has the IT related stuffs like web based, like that. But when it comes to OT, it's better to go with some kind of this ready-made tools, which can easily calculate. I mean, finding the vulnerabilities on individual assets. Okay, first now we completed the asset inventory. Then how? This is some of the. I'm not going to read everything. So the matrix will be given by, for example, this is being given by. Even we have taken this matrix from the 3-2 standard. Uh, on the here likelihood, you can see what are the exact this you can read out. So I'll keep it for some minutes. Here the safety environment impact, what could be the financial impact, and what is the reputation impact based on the severity. I mean, likelihood of the occurrence of the events based on like trivial, minor, moderate, major, and critical. So based on this we will do the conduct the risk assessment. So now let us start. I will take one example now. Let us go with the HMI station. Okay. So just give me a minute. I will start writing it, so it will be easy for you to see it.
Yeah. While you write, Manju, like one
Yes.
thing that I noticed that the fonts the online audiences. So maybe what we can do is we can put the sample
Okay.
plate later.
Maybe I will
Yeah,
just exactly. Yeah, I just zoomed in. Possibly if
yeah. So I was saying that maybe we can put them at as a link and share
yes,
it on the Huddle page later so that they can access it for their use.
yeah, exactly. We will share it with them. This
Yeah.
okay. So let us consider the asset as HMI station. Okay. So what would be the threat action? Would be it may follow attackers to take the access, right? So attacker may paint the system through all the vulnerabilities in the system. Okay, so what kind of vulnerability? We know that for example, okay, so this is one second, not this. Threat action could be insert USB into HMI station with maybe sophisticated malware. Then what could be the vulnerability is this HMI station in the control room. USB ports are not blocked. This is the vulnerability. Okay, we are taking a very simple example, but for for everything we will share it with you later. Yeah, or maybe disabled. Okay, not disabled. I mean, ports are not blocked or disabled, and also no antivirus. This is the normal vulnerability, and consequence will be denial of service attack on operation system, attack on HMI station. And what happens is when we this DOS attack happens, it may the all servers, it can spread, even this can spread to all the OS in the system, to all the stations in the system. For example, all these are connected to the control network, right? So it may spread to all the other systems as well. Now, coming to the risk rating, right? So basically, based on this risk matrix, we will consider. For example, if I have the access to the, if I am the attacker, I have the access to the, safety. I mean, this HMI station. What could be the impact for safety? I would say, for me, it is trivial, and then for economy also I would say trivial, or I would say for financial maybe minor. Then reputation probably it is moderate, for example. Then what is the maximum is, the moderate is number 3. So this also can be automated, for example. So now what is the unmitigated threat likelihood here, right? So you can see that the maximum rating is 3, and also the you know probably I will say, if someone is I mean has the this USB inserted into HMI station, probably the unmitigated threat likelihood could be likely for me, because it will happen. Then you can see that the risk is has become 15 and the target security level 2. But how we arrived at this, we did some formula calculation. Actually some of our friends has helped to automate this. Even this template we are using from our previous trainings. But we thank for all of them who has automated this Excel file just for this OT security huddle as well. We would like to thank them. And then you can see the risk is on the higher level, so we can see that it's in 15. I mean, we know that it is likely to happen because of this. So you may ask, like, now I have selected trivial, minor, moderate. I mean, based on this number, right? Trivial, moderate. But who will decide this? So this is where your experience comes. I mean, based on your experience of the OT and security domain, you might ask, suppose say you want to change it to minor, because let us tomorrow even the workshop, customer will say that, okay, for me the economic impact will be minor, or maybe they will say major. Then you can decide. So exactly, this is based on the experience, and also the workshop where we conduct the risk assessment workshop. This is where this numbering will happen. I mean, trivial or minor or moderate. Then even
Just wanted to add here,
yes, yes,
while you mentioned that this is very important here, that whenever we
yes,
do risk assessment and we bring all the people who are responsible from
correct,
different departments.
yes,
So we need people from operations, we need people from safety, we need people from IT side of the world, from OT side of the world, security teams, physical security, your operations, and everyone. And that's this is the part where we decide, okay, what will be the impact, the most discussions would happen. And it is very important that the risk assessor who is facilitating this risk assessment, he should take a neutral stance and only facilitate there. It does not need to give his perspective at that moment in the time. right? It is upon the people who are owner of the asset, they and the operations, they will understand that what could be the real impact if they have any history already available, the incident already available. They might have had some knowledge captured there. So most of the time when I had done, this is the most discussed topic. Some of the people, let's say the OEM side of people who are responsible for maintenance, they would say no, the impact is not that much. Whereas also the operations people, they would also would like to downgrade the impact as such, because their focus is not to complicate the things but to keep the plant running. So we need to bring out the perspective that is very important, but not to influence the decision as such. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Shiv. Yeah, now we so this SLT is automatically it's calculating from the CRRF, that is cyber risk reduction factor. How it is calculated is the it is calculating from the unmitigated risk divided by the tolerable risk, and this tolerable risk is defined by the organization. So that anyways, for this calculation, anyways, in the next session in the public, OT security huddle, we will be talking about taking a detailed step on how to arrive at this number. So as of now, anyways, we automated this. So now, once we arrive at the unmitigated threat likelihood, I mean, the risk has been calculated as 15 now based on the risk matrix. Now, when we say countermeasure, so we have, definitely we will have some policy procedure about the, disabling this, or so we need to follow that. And also, let us say application whitelisting in place. Suppose if it is not there, that is fine. So this is just for an information. Okay, we have put. Then probably, here we have put unmitigated threat likelihood UTL is likely, but if we have this in the existing countermeasure, then we may, it probably it is unlikely. Then what is the recommendation that you give? Definitely you will say that you disable unused USB ports. I mean, like through even you can use GPO registry, many things, right, etc. Also what you can do is uh, maybe you can relocate the HMI station, for example, to server room where you will have physical lock and only the authorized person will have the access, right? Not everyone will have the access. Server room, this is also one. And then install antivirus, and then probably you can even uh, maybe stricter enforcement of your policy as well, because many times we have policies but it is not known to the uh, to the employees. So ultimately we arrive at the last stage. Suppose if all these recommendations are have been considered, yes, definitely achieved threat likelihood we will be very rare. It's not that not rare, I mean improbable, I would say. So you can say that ultimately my risk has reduced to 3 now. Initially it was 15 unmitigated, now achieved threat likelihood has become to 3, right? So based on the calculation. So ultimately we need to reduce the risk less than the tolerable risk. Okay, so this is what we have achieved basically. So the same workflow goes with the other for example, based on the asset inventory, even HMI station might have the multiple vulnerabilities, so we need to consider each point. So here we have considered only one threat action like vulnerabilities. Probably you might have heard, for example, if you take Windows 10, Windows XP, there will be lakhs of vulnerabilities in the, you can find it in NVDs. So it is not necessary to put everything, whichever is applicable. Specifically when we talk about DCS or PLCs, there might be less vulnerabilities compared to normal OS. So we can, if we consider which are very critical, then we can put those. Even minor also we can put, but ultimately it is up to the risk assessor how he need to consider. So now, for example, let us take, we know that here we are using in the asset inventory Windows XP, and everybody knows that, Windows software. Asset is Windows software, and what could be the threat action if he, maybe he can access the complete, he or she can access overall system. by exploiting the vulnerabilities. What is a vulnerability? That we are already aware that Windows XP has stopped, right? Because of the multiple vulnerabilities, multiple vulnerabilities. So I will just type short forms. So it can be exploited. Yeah, then the consequence definitely, attacker might might exploit these vulnerabilities and access the complete system. So if this complete system is available with him, then definitely it has the higher risk, right? Because this is a major bug in the system. So I will say that it would be moderate uh, for all the system. Let us say maybe reputation could go damage major, then maximum probably 5, and then definitely this one would be possible, right? Then you can see that the risk has gone to 3 and the target security level to be achieved as 3. And there is no countermeasure unless you have to isolate the system, but I cannot isolate the system, so there is no existing then definitely my mitigated will be 3. And then what you can say is either the quick measure is isolate the system, or finally the recommendation is upgrade the windows, right? Upgrade the windows, XP to Windows 10 or Windows 11, latest one. So then you can say it could be rare, improbable. It's not, yeah, you can say improbable if all the system hardening everything took place, but also you need to consider the hardware compatibility of this Windows machine as well. So in that case you can say probably it is rare. I can only update with certain SPs which has some vulnerabilities. It is up to the customer again, but ultimately you should convey that the ultimately the risk has to be reduced less than the tolerable risk. So we have seen this, so now with that Excel sheet, what we have achieved, now you start reading this workflow, you will understand easily what we have done. So this is a simple example that we took. Now if you read this, as per 3-2, you will easily understand that is what we did, right? We have identified the threats and vulnerabilities and determined the consequence impact based on the risk matrix. And finally, we arrived at unmitigated cyber risk, and the SLT also automatically we have calculated, but it again depends. So here, if you see the unmitigated risk exceeds the tolerable risk. So in our case, it was, uh, no, then again we will do this, again we will check whether it is existing countermeasures are there. If yes, then we will list out. Then again we will reevaluate the mitigated threat likelihood, and finally we will come to a conclusion that this is what the after the recommendation, if it is implemented, we will arrive at the final figure. So ultimately we have to reduce the risk. That is what our risk assessment says. And also from this, what customer will get the advantage is they will understand what are the assets which has the higher risk. Based on this, for example, here ultimately even after this, oh, okay, so even if we know that the mitigated threat likelihood, he will take it, and then all these risk, based on these ratings, you can achieve as criticality, or whether it is very high or high. So depending on the numbering, they can decide which recommendation to take first in place. So this is what we have come to a conclusion. Shiv, would you like to add few things here?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, Manjunath, very well and simple way that you've used to explain it. Generally, the discussions are more complicated than the way, and it clearly shows the experience that you bring here. So, thanks for that. One important perspective there is I would also like to discuss. Let's say we have the asset inventory, and like an employee who is working in the organization, he wants to do the risk assessment, and he does not have the vulnerability assessment report. So let's say he has the asset inventory available, and now he wants to know the vulnerability that do exist for that particular asset without any risk assessment connecting to the network. So what tool would you suggest to get the list of vulnerabilities and the list of threats for that particular system or that particular plant, which is maybe a electric utility, maybe a manufacturing plant. And we'll get there in a bit. But before that, I would also like to add one important point here is why we need the asset inventory and why we need the current asset inventory is very important. Some time back you mentioned that if we have Windows XP, then it might have 1 lakh vulnerabilities which is available already. But at the same time, we really need to update the vulnerability that what version of Windows XP are we using and what is the current patch level of the this particular OS. With this, we will be negating the vulnerabilities which are not applicable to our system, and we only need to focus the vulnerability which are applicable to it. While I'm saying so, it's kind of counterintuitive because anything related to Windows XP is already vulnerable. So you need not to bother which vulnerability I should consider. Everything is vulnerable there, whether it's SMB or and number of remote code execution vulnerability do exist in Windows, but this holds true for other operating systems as well. That we really need to keep updating the vulnerability with the information every time we do the patching, every time we do the update of the system. It needs to be there in the asset inventory as well. And there are n number of tools that can be used for either automated way of doing the asset inventory update or maybe some manual asset inventory update as well. Yeah, so and this asset inventory topic itself may require maybe a separate huddle discussion as well, because this question is generally asked a lot, that which is the right way to keep updated the asset inventory, whether I should do automated asset inventory, whether I should do a manual asset inventory, should I use active way to scan the network, should I use the passive way to scan the network to get the asset inventory. But these questions could be a good discussion point. So while we move forward to identifying the vulnerabilities, I will also request yeah, people who are online that they can put their suggestion for the topics that they want us to cover in the coming huddles. Yeah, over
Yeah.
to you, Manju.
Yes. So finding vulnerabilities, we have a lot many places now. Like one such useful tool, what I have in recent times is ICS Advisory Project. Here, what they did is usually whenever there is an update from the the CISA website, right? For example, CISA ICS CERT. If you search in Google, the first thing, the cybersecurity alerts and advisory. Here, if you go to news and events, click on the cybersecurity alerts and advisories. So here you will get all the vulnerabilities related to the ICS products. I mean, it's not the common one. So even we have NVDs, even the same thing, because it will have even national vulnerability database also will be updated. And but all these organizations work together to release the CV numbers and the vulnerability list. So the ICS advisory project, why it is such a good tool, is because you can search. For example, now we know in the our asset inventory, right? We know that Siemens PLC is there. I want to go and check S71200. So, for example, I will search for vendor, let us say Siemens. Then I will select Siemens only, and then say S7, right? S71200. Okay, so I will say S71200. So now it is list down. Like for example, if you click on this, then I have all the information available with me. So if you see, there will be many. I need to select the the range, then it will give more alerts. But I'm just giving an example. Like here, once you go here, it will clearly says like what are the affected products, impact, vulnerability characterization. So the good thing is it is directing to the original vulnerability disclosure. So like CISA website, which will have all the mitigation plans as well. So you can just bookmark this. Not only this, even we can go to you can choose for example ABB. Okay, let me take ABB. So I will say ABB, and even you can download this Excel file as well. So the for example, I will just go, what is it, OPC server. Okay, I will just click on this. now it has gone to the CISA page, right, where it says what is the CVS score, vendor, equipment vulnerability list. Even same thing, if you want, you just bookmark this, and also you can subscribe to this. So whenever there is a vulnerability, you will get the alert, right? For example, see, today we that CISA's VDP platform annual report showcase success, but six industrial control system advisories. So what are those? Each will have its own number. Then when you click on this, again you will get the details, right? Which vendor, which vulnerability. So, for example, based on your asset inventory, it is not necessary that only while conducting the risk assessment we will be using this. Suppose you are working in a plant, and if you need some information, then you can straight away visit these ICS advisory project, search for your product, and just or maybe subscribe to this. So this is what I felt, most of the time we will be using. And even some automated tools are there like Clarity, Nozomi, and Dragos, Waterfall, and all these have threat intelligence, but these are paid ones, and these are vulnerability. If you want, you can find it easily. And also there are some open source tools, from OTPCAP analyzer. If you have the PK file, just put it and it will upgrade. The problem with these open source is not, the latest information might not be available. You need to update, on the system regularly. Otherwise, if you know everything, these are the website which are really helpful on the OT. Yeah. Shiv, would you like to add few stuffs, or maybe we can take some questions in between?
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
are already close to 53 minutes. We have 7 minutes. So maybe I will. I'll see if there are few questions.
There
Uh,
are many questions. I think even people are
so,
responding to those questions. I really
so
liked
what,
it.
shout out to the people who are contributing there. It's really we are fulfilling the objective here. I really like to thank the people who are answering the question and engaging in the discussion here. So a big shout out to them. Yeah, so we have question from Hustle. How do we consider impact and likelihood trading and risk metrics as well? And I see a couple of people have already answered this. That this is where the experience of the risk assessor comes in picture to guide them. Okay, how do I come? And this is also a subjective matter, as well as there could be some guideline that could be available. You can refer MITRE attack framework, and maybe next session we will give you a walkthrough of attack navigator. That could also be helpful in understanding what kind of impact these particular threats could have if they get materialized. But would you like to add here, Manju, something on this nature of identifying the likelihood and impact?
Yeah, again, it is depending on the corporate risk matrix as well, because and also the infrastructure. Even though it is subjective, I know, but if you have the corporate risk matrix, the impact and likelihood ratings, it varies. I mean, for example, if I consider wind farm, probably the rating what I consider, the risk matrix may not be same as the in oil and gas petrochemical. So again, it varies. So I would like to add, and we can talk about this particular subject itself for one OT security huddle. Yeah, maybe offline we can share our learnings
Yes.
through LinkedIn platform. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So I am also flashing one of the comment that Ruchir has put up there. It's very good comment that we can also consider the TTX added into this assessment exercise. And TTXs are really helpful to understand your techniques that are being used by the attackers or the malicious actors. And maybe in the coming sessions, I would really like to give a walkthrough of these techniques, which are really helpful to drive your threat map of a particular industry or a plant. Yeah, but thanks, Ruchir, for putting that up into the discussion. Then we have some submissions that we can keep the next hurdle on network segmentations. Surely, Govind, we will consider that. But since we have already booked the next one for calculating the risk, the security level target, maybe immediately after that, this can be a good candidate of uh, discussing the network segmentation part. Also, there is one more suggestion by Debopam Mukherjee. It will be helpful if there is a session on preparation of checklists for cybersecurity points for Fed. It's a very tricky one, but yeah, we'll try to share something on that one as well. I already had shared some insight on this particular topic maybe last year itself. So maybe I'll pin this up into the Huddle page once more, because that post was really helpful and I got really good response from the people on that one. Uh, then Pavitran has submitted. Maybe we can take a vulnerability assessment as well. Yeah, so he's asking us to maybe prepare a full-fledged training itself. Yeah, then there is one more comment by Amit, Ahmad to Amit. Sometimes system owner put wrong risk level, like backup and restore. He can put moderate, but in SIS will be high risk, not moderate. Yeah, so these are some engagements, really wonderful things that people are discussing. Maybe I'll quickly scroll down to some more comments. Uh, Gaurav is asking about the recording. So Gaurav, recording is already available in the Huddle YouTube channel. You can use that, and also it will be available for rewatch in LinkedIn as well. Then there is a couple of more comments. Chilfikar has mentioned we also have to consider the impact of upgrading the end of life windows. Absolutely, yeah. That we need to consider what will be the impact if we are upgrading the systems which are critical in the environment. And I know a number of examples like this. And this one example that I give is 4 years ago I visited a plant and they are running one of their system on 98, and they tried to upgrade it to Windows ME, and the system was malfunctioning, so they required to go back to Windows 98. So we really need to consider what will be the impact of upgrading the system as well, and that's where the specific standard that is part of the 62443 kitty is 2-3, and it has given the guidelines for patch management. Even that could also be a one good topic for Huddle maybe sometime. Yeah, so then we majorly have comments. So I would not be able to flash them all, but I would like to thank all the people who have spared their time and joined this Huddle. This is the motivation for us, that people are engaging here and giving their suggestion, their comment, they are engaging in discussion, and we would really like to see more of such engagements in moving forward. And that's the reason we are coming up with some different format of discussions as well. And one of them would be bringing the people from the industry and academia. We are starting it very soon, maybe in 1 week or 2 weeks of time. We will be starting something called as OT Security Huddle Talks, where the people from the industry will be discussing their experiences, sharing the insight, how they built up their cybersecurity programs, and how they succeed in overcoming the buying in from the management sometimes, or maybe researching on the product security side. So I'm really excited about this one as well, and looking forward to really organize this new format of OT Security Huddle discussions. Apart from this next Huddle 4 would be there for calculating the security level target, and then the topic that you suggested, we may take them into the coming discussions as well. So at this juncture, I would like to thank you, Manju, again for joining today and sparing your time, not only for the discussion, but also spending some time with me in preparing for this discussion. As a closing note, would you like to add something?
Yeah, just would like to, it's good to see, people are commenting and sharing their insights also. So this also helps us, I mean, as a speaker, or even we are also on the learning process. So we learn from you guys as well. So thanks for joining, and thanks, Shiv, for arranging this session. And really, I know in the background how much hard work we are putting in, so it's great to see that. Thank you.
It is all succeeded when I'm seeing already the really good engagement and enthusiasm with the people. So thanks to the people and thanks to you, Manju. With
Thank you.
this,
Yeah.
maybe we can
Okay.
close the session. We are
Thank you.
right on time. We have just finished 1 hour now. So thanks again. Thank you, everyone. Do subscribe to our channel and follow OT Security Huddle page. If you really want to watch the sessions again, you can follow the YouTube streams, and then maybe they could be helpful in your day-to-day work as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice weekend.